So from pick fucking to space.
Yeah. Makes sense. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Brian. Thanks for letting me come talk tonight. It's a topic that's very near and dear to me. I kind of practice it on a day-to-day basis. I work for NASA. I'm a lawyer for them, and I work on contracts and commercial relationships with space companies. And I'm going to talk tonight about old space, new space, kind of our effort to commercialize, at first, low Earth orbit. So let's start with old space. I call it the way we used to do things, and still do to some extent. A lot of white men in terrible shirts, doing science. It's all very bureaucratic, government controlled. NASA obviously doesn't do it all itself. It doesn't have the civil servant workforce to do it. But we own end up owning the launch vehicle, spacecraft itself, and all support of launch and on-orbit operations. We've done this from the beginning of the space program through the space shuttle, and this is the way kind of old space works. We don't do it alone. We do it with contractors, usually large defense aerospace contractors. They're very long-term, long lead time contracts, and they're built. These spacecraft are built to our specifications. We're very much in the loop on what gets made and how it works. It's very slow, it's very top-down, it's very expensive, and it's very bureaucratic. We still do it this way in some circumstances, particularly with deep space exploration. This is the Orion multi-purpose crew vehicle. It's what's going to take us to Mars. This is the SLS, or Space Launch System. It's the largest rocket that's ever created. Boeing is making this for us, and Lockheed Martin is making this for us. There's some context there, some scale. New space, on the other hand, is kind of marked by a burgeoning kind of profit-driven spaceflight industry, very startup culture-y, and some entities only exist on paper. Nobody's actually made anything yet. The idea is that this burgeoning industry would provide a service. And so what do you need to make a market? You need customers, and we, as NASA, are kind of the perfect customer because we have continuing need for low Earth operations, specifically on the space station. We have to send astronauts, we have to send food, we have to send science, and we started with something that's a little bit more that you can routinize. So we don't have a space shuttle anymore. We have continued operations on the space station, and no way to get back to the International Space Station but for relying on the Russians at $72 million a seat to fly us in the Soyuz. And so, step one of this commercialization effort is we take kind of a venture capitalist approach. We enter into these agreements with companies, and the objective is to provide them some seed money and technical assistance so they can continue to design and develop their products. It's going to the rules of the game. It's only a small portion of the total cost. We're not fitting the bill. It's just seed money. And it's not free money. There are strings attached to it. You need to show financial solvency, and you need to show, that you have skin in the game, that you can bring your own private resources to the matter. But the creative control of the spacecraft itself is kind of up to the contract or up to the company to do. And so again, we start with something that we can routinize, resupplying the International Space Station with cargo. So we look. To resupply ISS safer than going right to human spaceflight. It's kind of a bit of a jump to turn that over to private industry. So we enter into agreements with SpaceX, Orbital Sciences Corporation, and most recently Sierra Nevada Corporation to develop these resupply vehicles that travel to the space station and give the astronauts their much needed food and water and science experiments and everything else. So once you've established the capability, the second step is to buy the services. So we, NASA, are a customer. We have a need, and we are relying on these companies. So we award contracts to them for missions, and it's mission by mission. And they use their own launch vehicles, their own cargo, and they do it all themselves. Now it's hard. And Orbital had a flight that blew up. SpaceX also had a flight that there was an anomaly in it. During staging, there was destroyed the spacecraft, but it's worked for the most part. I mean, the two companies have demonstrated the ability to get to the space station successfully and come back. So we evolved that concept to transporting humans. Same pathway, new commercial partnerships to assist these companies in developing their human space transportation capabilities. In our case, we did Boeing, which is an old space company, a big defense company. SpaceX, once again, in Sierra Nevada. These are the company's designs for crew capsule. As you can see, I mean, SpaceX just took their cargo capsule and tried to fit it to be human-rated. Boeing, who's building the Orion, just took the idea from Orion and went with that. Sierra Nevada has like this weird miniature shuttle type thing. I don't really know how that's going to work. But so we call it like the Uber to space, right? Like we buy seats from these companies, and the companies are responsible for doing all of the mission. Like we are kind of out of the loop, and we have involvement, but much less so than we have like with like the space shuttle, things like that. So it's all up to the company to do it. So again, all you have to do is meet our safety requirements, but that's really the only requirement we have. Again, it's your movie. The capabilities have to meet NASA's human spaceflight safety standards. And yeah, so how does this benefit us? We have a stagnant or shrinking budget every year. And what this does, commercialization allows us to do more with less. And we can concentrate on deep space exploration, science, technology. And we want to commercialize low Earth orbit. The hope is to turn the control of the ISS over to commercial companies by 2025 when we leave the ISS. And I think I'd like to end by talking about how you could use this model, which we've tested, we've proven, like it works, like we're building a spaceflight industry. Well, how else can you use that? I mean, transportation obviously comes to mind. Transportation to the moon, transportation to deep space like an asteroid for resource extraction. Resources on the moon. There's water on the moon. You take the water, you make fuel for rockets to go into deep space. I mean, the possibilities are endless as far as kind of how you can continue to commercialize this and not have it be, just nationalized space agency, doing government. So that's it.
Questions?
Independence Day 1 or 2, which is
preference. one was more true to the book, right? I guess.
You said one. I should do a proper question. You said the only kind of regulatory framework, if one of the better expression, was that you needed to pass the safety requirements of NASA, because it's going down that kind of private enterprise route. What other regulations are in place to make sure that facility doesn't fall into the hands of people perhaps you might not want it to fall?
Certainly, there are national security concerns. I mean, in the safety, in that umbrella, there are these considerations that you have to be able to demonstrate you're able to, fly safe, fly securely. NASA's not a regulatory agency. We're just a science exploration research agency. From the moment of launch to the edge of space is governed by the Federal Aviation Administration. That's FAA's turf, and you actually have to go. SpaceX has to get a permit from FAA every time they fly to the space station. So we're just go get the permit. Like, we hope you guys can get it approved and everything, but like you've got to, you need it for launch. So yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So in terms of commercial, like you said, the space Uber and stuff like that. Like, what's the time frame that you're looking at for when people can actually, go online, go on Skyscanner and buy a ticket?
A lot has to happen before that, but so Boeing, I think, is probably going to be the first to fly. They will fly. The original intended date, both of them proposed to us that they'd fly by the end of 2017. To the space station.
It's really sad.
Yeah, I think we schedule slip
better work a bit harder.
And you could probably buy. I mean, we encourage these companies to go out and if you want to sell seats on your thing, that's your business. You do it. You need to figure out a way to recoup your investment. And so 2018 probably, I would say realistically, we'll fly to the space station. It's weird, there's the last shuttle flight in 2011, they left an American flag on the space station with the idea being that whoever is a first commercial company to reach the space station can capture the flag. I don't know,
That's so
Some-
American.
It's very American. It's very American. Everything we do, right? We do flags and we do acronyms. Yes, sir.
If the International Space Station is commercialized, will that skew the science that comes out of it to benefit? Who do you think it will skew the benefit toward and then away from?
That's a good question.
And also, which countries will dominate that competition?
Yeah, no, this is great. Yeah. I think you look at the kind of typical, like the typical criminals in this thing is like, the European Space Agency, all the European nationalized space agencies, the Japanese Space Agency, Russia. I think they're going to have I think everybody's going to have continuing needs to do science on station, in NASA's interest. But that's an excellent question. I really don't know how to answer. I would hope that science is science, no matter who you're doing the science for, and that as long as the science is getting done, there's betterment of humanity, I guess. But you're right, like, I guess a drug company could go up there and do pharmaceutical research. There's all kinds of different, and we use it. I mean, we grow stuff up there because we're like, okay, how do we grow it on Mars? We need to figure out how to grow it here first, So yeah. What was the second part? I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, which countries will be the most competitive in commercializing it?
Yeah, spacefaring nations it's kind of a really interesting topic. Every year there's an International Astronautical Congress, and every year they have it in a different city. And it's amazing the country representation that comes in, even very poor GDP countries who are like, we want to get in on this somehow. How do we do it, And so it's very much that same paradigm of the developed world versus the developing world. But I think NASA, at least we're a very apolitical organization. We have very few political appointees. But I think one kind of policy push that we really tried to enforce is more international partnership with people that you normally wouldn't, typically you wouldn't partner with before. So, yes, sir.
Do you see a huge rise in, I guess, more kind of developing countries, especially India, for example, right? Yeah, I mean, I heard recently, or I guess maybe 6 months ago, that India sent a probe to Mars for less than the US spent to film the movie Gravity, right? So this is fascinating.
Right.
And so, what role do they have in this, in the ISS, or are they not a part of it?
We've sent an Indian astronaut with us with our mission, and they have their own space program, they have their own satellite capability and things like that. But I think it's a good model for a commercializing, realm here to say well, if you guys can do it cheaper, why can't other companies do it cheaper as well? So I think it drives that market. SpaceX is kind of the biggest example of that, right? Like the reusable rocket, they're able to land the first stage on a drone ship and cut their launch costs in half. And so it's those kind of forward-leaning, really shoot for the moon kind of things that actually drive the cost down.
I guess second point, very quick. The ISS is definitely designed for I would assume man to be in space.
Humans.
Yes.
We don't like to
research on this very kind of human scale, right?
Sure.
This is incredibly expensive.
Yes.
You need food, you need air, you need everything. And if something goes wrong, it's catastrophic. Perhaps, I don't know your views on this, but in the future we won't need to send a living organism. We have developed satellites that are that size. Is this a potential, or do you think
nanotechnology, things like that?
Yeah, I think there was something in the news maybe a month ago about a satellite the size of a postage stamp, and it would be able to reach Pluto kind of thing in a few months' time, rather than 9 years that it took the Voyager mission.
Sure.
Do you think we will still need the ISS in this regard?
I think there's always a place for the ISS. I think it could morph into just about anything from a floating hotel to to what it is now. There's a million and one different uses for it. It's a really good proving ground for us to demonstrate technology. So we just had an astronaut come back from living in space for a year, with the idea being, okay, what does living up there for a year do to your body if we're going to send someone on a 3 to 4 year mission to Mars? And it's very expensive, but it also like we gain. Like NASA's party line is always for every dollar you spend with NASA, like the return on investment is fivefold. And so we still have a long way to go. We have no idea how to shield the craft to keep people from basically irradiating as they go to Mars. So you need a stable environment in low Earth orbit to start to try to do these experiments and figure out how it's going to work. The other proving ground is the asteroid belt, right? So going to the asteroid mission is our next target, and out there is our proving ground for figuring out like, okay, all the technologies we need to get to Mars, can we do them here as kind of a dry run and figure out if they work before we go on? But I think you bring up a very existential question of like, are we intended to be a spacefaring species, a multiplanetary species? Elon Musk would tell you like, yes.
Definitely yes.
And then everything is a computer simulation.
We ruined like here, right? So
yeah.
we have to go.
We gotta go, right? Like
let's get terraformed.
Humans have moved since the dawn of time, right? Like we've migrated. That's what we do. Like we go. And I think that drive, speaking of like an evolutionary perspective, like I think it's very deeply ingrained. I don't see anything wrong with it. It's very expensive. It's discretionary spending. What I love to see like a quarter of our defense budget given to us. Like we could do things that you wouldn't even be able to imagine. But like we get a tiny sliver of money and we try to do the most we can with it. I think it's a worthwhile enterprise. I really do. And I'm not just saying that because I work for the company. I think we're supposed to do it. Yes, sir.
Space pirates.
Space pirates, yes.
When and how? And where do I sign up?
You'll get your booty at the end of the mission. Don't worry.
Do the ships have sails as well?
Yeah. There's actually like a solar sail method of capturing hydrogen. Like a huge sail, and it's supposed to be, interstellar transport. It's a concept. But what's that?
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's very picturesque. I don't know much about space pirates.
Where would you, if you can't launch from within the U.S. because the FAA controls it until orbit, could you launch from international waters?
Korea, probably, right?
International waters?
Right. I think as you commercialize, if there's money up there to be made, I think you're going to see people's greed take over, and yeah, it's possible.
Why would SpaceX launch from the U.S. when they could launch from the middle of the ocean without having to get an FAA permit?
Well, that's a good question. Launching from the middle of the ocean is very difficult. The ocean waves like this, and it's really difficult to kind of get it to go that way. You need a pretty substantial launch capability to, a pad and a base and everything like that. So, there are contractors, so it's like you kind of got to fly from here. Like